After the introduction for those commonly used attack defense, let's have a look what are the other threat protection features that we added into the NG firewall, which including the antivirus, the intrusion prevention system, the cloud-based sandboxing, bootnet CNC prevention, and also the parameter traffic filtering. So threat prevention is the functions that we used to detect and block the various network threats. By enabling these kind of functions, we are able to defend against the commonly used attacks and also the threats. So after the ARP defense and attack defense, I'm going to share more information for those threat protection features: AV, IPS, sandbox, bootnet CNC, and also PTF. As you can see, also I already mentioned before, for the NG firewall, those threat prevention functions more or less based on the signature matching. So we will have the signature database, and also those signatures will be updated frequently to enhance the matching capability of any new added threats, which including AV signature, IPS signature, IP reputation signature, sandbox, whitelist database, bootnet CNC prevention signature. So we support the auto update for all those signature database, and also you can do some local update with the offline file. The threat protection functions supported to be enabled in both security zone and also policy. The signature will be divided into different severity level: critical, warning, and information. So we can take actions for those specific signature attack according to the severity. So here is the signature database update page, as I showed before. So you can enable the auto update. So the device will query for the update by the scheduled time, during the scheduled time, to update for the specific signature database. So after you have all the signature updated to the latest version, we can enable those security functions. So take the AV. We can detect those threats, including the worms, the trojans, the malwares, and also the malicious websites by using the AV functions. The supported protocol for AV, including POP3, HTTP, or HTTPS, SMTP, IMAP4, FTP, and SMB protocol. And supported files, we support for the commonly used like Office, PDF, the emails, the picture files, and also even for the archives, the compressed files. And in the AV function, we also support to detect for any malicious website. This function is controlled by the license. It's one of the subscription license. In the device, we have 3 predefined AV profile with different privilege, with different priority, which is low, middle, and high. Low, middle, and high. You can also add your user-defined AV profile. You need to select the file types that need to be detected by the AV engine. You can select the file type and also the supported protocols. And you can also enable the malicious website access control to protect any access to these non-malicious websites. And for the HTTP protocol, we also support the warning functions. So that means as long as there is any virus detected for the specific HTTP page, we will redirect to a warning page. To tell the customer or tell the user there's any virus had been detected by our AV functions. And we support maximum 5 layers for the compressed files. We support to detect maximum 5 layers compressed file. And after you enabled the AV function, okay, and created the AV profile, you can enable the AV functions in both policy and zone. As you can see here, both policy zones support to enable the AV, and the AV profile that enabled, if you enable both at policy and zone at the same time, the policy one will take effect. The policy one will have higher priority. And after the AV functions enabled, and it will keep monitoring all the transferred files, and then as long as there is any viruses or malwares detected, it will record for the threat log. As you can see, it will give you the detailed information for this threat. The second one will be the IPS. So IPS have 2 working mode. One is log only mode, another is IPS mode. By default, the device will work in IPS mode. And you can enable IPS in both policy and zone. If you enable the IPS in zone, you can also choose the detection direction. For the intrusions. And the detection of the IPS contains two matching option. One is the signature matching. It will abstract the intrastate protocol elements of the traffic and then trying to match with your existing signature database. If matched, the system will process the traffic according to the action that you configured for the IPS. The second part is the protocol. Detection. So we will analyze the protocol part for the traffic. If the analysis results in any protocol that contains abnormal contents, we will process the traffic according to the actions that you set for the protocols, for the specific protocol. Let's have a look how to configure for the IPS profile. So under the object, you are able to find the intrusion prevention system and then click configuration. First of all, you need to make sure the IPS function had been enabled and working in IPS mode. And then here is the predefined profile. You can also add a user-defined profile. And for IPS detecting, as I mentioned, we support 2 parts. One is signature matching, another is the protocol detections. Okay. You need to set both separately. For the signatures, we have a IPS signature list. IPS signature list. You can select for the specific IPS through the protocol that the IPS used, the OS, the attack type, etc., and then add for the specific action. Add for the specific action. Either log only or reset the connection or block IP or service. That is the action for the IPS. And also, if you want to control based on the protocol, especially for the application layer protection, you can select the protocol, for example, HTTP, and then to configure the protection against those application layer attacks like secure injection, XSS, and external link, CC attack, etc. for the web servers. And here is the detailed configuration against all those commonly attacks, these common attacks in the application layer. After that, you can enable the IPS profile in both zone and policy. And after that, you are able to detect any intrusions and record with a log. And you can also click the name to see the details of the threat analysis. And also, we will show you the CVE ID for the specific vulnerabilities. Another functions that widely used to detect for any advanced threat is the sandbox function. In Hailstone Firewall, we are using the cloud-based sandboxing. The cloud-based sandbox processing including 3 stages. So one is the firewall detection, and second is the cloud detection, which is Hailstone Cloud. And the third part will be the cloud sandbox detection, which we do partnership with Lastline to use the Lastline dynamic sandbox detection. For the Hailstone side, the Hailstone Cloud, which we used to store the known MD5 for those files. And the cloud sandbox from Lastline, which is used for the dynamic analysis for the unknown files. Here's the configuration for the sandbox. You can set the supported file size that will be uploaded to the cloud. And then we also support to provide the file log and also the report. Those are the supported files. We also have some predefined profile for the sandbox. You can also create your user define. And those are the supported protocol and supported file type you can select from the drop-down list. And sandbox function also support in both policy and zone. After the sandbox enabled, if there is any unknown files that we uploaded to the cloud for analysis, we will provide for the sandbox log. And you are also able to download the cloud sandbox report for the deep analysis. Bootnet CNC prevention. As you know, currently boot is widely used by the hackers to triggering the internet flooding or DOS attacks. The boot will be automatically running with the children that execute the external commands that connected to the external CNC server. The hackers use this advantage to trigger any of the DOS attacks from your internet by the infected computers, by the infected hosts. So what we are doing in the firewall, we introduced with the CNC prevention function, which can help to detect the botnets inside of your network. It will scan the traffic at the network parameter and perform CNC detections. And by comparing the obtained information with the CNC address database, we can effectively discover the internet brawlers, and also prevent the connections or further attacks from those hacked hosts. We are using the CNC address database, which contains for both IP address and domain to control for the CNC. The supported protocol, we support TCP, HTTP, and DNS. And we will also generate the thread log. Here's the user-defined configurations for the botnet CNC. You can enable the botnet and then detect any of the connection through the TCP, HTTP, or DNS. And then you can enable in both zone and policy. If any CNC connection detected, we will record for the thread log, for the CNC log. And also you are able to see the details, especially the CNC server that the internal hosts are connected with. And last one will be the PTF, the parameter traffic filtering. As you know, currently there are large numbers of malicious IPs in the network, which consistently will send the spam, botnets, and also DOS attacks through the public network or through internet. So the traditional firewall, which will be useful, after it had been attacked or detect or help to defense against these kind of attacks. But what PTF can do, we will block those malicious IP directly before any attack or before any threats triggered. So we will previously block this malicious IP at first, okay, to prevent it happen from the beginning. So those we also called the IP reputation to block those bad IP in the blacklist. Here's the configuration. So for the IP reputation, we have the blacklist for different attack behaviors. Some questions for this chapter. So what threat protection functions need to reboot the device? Most of the security functions, after enable, you need to reboot the device. What file type can be supported by sandbox? Okay. So those are the supported files. Okay. What is the URL for signature database update? So update1.hillstonenet.com and update2.hillstonenet.com. There are two ways to apply those security profile. The difference, so you can enable those or apply the profile for both zone and policy. The difference is the policy one will have higher priority comparing with the zone bound security profile. Is that possible to update the IPS and AV signature database if the corresponding service license expired? If any of these subscription license expired, you cannot update to the latest signature database. So the customer must renew for those service license to have the latest signatures. So this is for the threat protection